shoot first and you ask questions later.
You just met him.
Fidgeting, man. I'm right about him. I'm always right. It's like when I'm right, I'm right. And when I'm wrong, I could have been right. So I'm still right because I could have been wrong.
That makes sense. Come on. Say that again. Come on.
It's like when I'm right, I'm right. When I'm wrong, I could have been right. So I'm still right because I could have been wrong, you know. And I'm sorry because I could be wrong right now. I could be wrong right now. But I'm right.
That was a clip from Get Rich or Die Trying. Welcome to First Kick Seahawks, the show brought to you by this killer headache I have right now, but we are still going to do it because I am alleviated by all the emotional tension that we had over this offseason. Man, I was worried a little bit about our depth. I knew that we had a good team, but the question was, does coaching really matter all that much if a player can't get on the field and perform all on their own? There was a few players that we had talked about over the last year or so, and I thought that they were just bad. But apparently coaching can make a gigantic difference. I mean, I know it makes a difference, but at some point you just got to call a lemon, and there was a couple lemons out there that shined Saturday night against the Cleveland Browns. That game started really late. It started at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm 7 p.m. West, but I was fascinated by the amount of energy that these players had. They were ready to go like they didn't care that it was a 7 p.m. game, 10 p.m. about-ish for the Cleveland Browns. The big thing is, man, people started saying something I completely disagree with. Finally, a good preseason game. I mean, maybe if you're comparing it to previous years, sure, but we have now had 3 really good preseason games. And, I mean, maybe it's Mike Macdonald, maybe it's Leslie Frazier and the rest of them. I'm not entirely sure, but these games have been raucous, right? The Seahawks fans were absolutely killing it last night. They were doing the wave. They were chanting all over when their defense was playing, but you can't do that when the offense is out there, guys. They were doing that against our offense, and they were being really loud. But, you know, as everyone says, oh, it is the preseason for everyone, right? And so maybe our 12th man is just going to get their shit together because it's been a while since they've had something to cheer for like that. Now, this isn't to say we were the greatest defense of all time. This is why you should be cheering so much. But we were playing really well. In fact, I would dare to say that on both sides of the ball, we are playing as well as we did in 2015, right? Before our offensive line and the rest of the team started to gradually decay away. We looked physical. Both sides of the ball looked super physical, which I knew was going to happen, right? But the question was, how is Mike Macdonald going to run his camp? Pete Carroll, of course, focused on preventing explosives. We've seen quite a few passing explosives by opposing teams this preseason, but he also wouldn't really focus on the little technicalities in the middle. And Mike Macdonald is the exact opposite. We're not necessarily focused on explosives because if you do all the little technicalities in the middle, you won't have explosives. But we've been having them. I think also he plans on just scheming all that shit away. So we'll see as he finally gets to reveal his playbook against Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos in 2 weeks. He has gotten these guys tackling really well. If you watched some of the streams earlier in the season, we talked about Tyrese Knight and how I had 2 concerns with him. One of them was, can he break off of blocks and then complete a tackle? And then can he tackle well in the open field without dropping his hip? He struggled a little bit in week 2 and week 1 with block shedding, but then in week 3, problem solved. We saw him breaking off of blocks and shedding towards the tackle over and over again. And then every preseason game, Tyrese Knight has been a hell of a tackler. So I credit that to Kirk Olivedati, Mike McDonald in particular. Another thing that we've seen from our linebacking core is that or actually the entire team, is that they have a really high floor. We're going to lose a lot of these guys to other teams. I would expect a lot of players are going to end up on the on the practice squad. We might even see another player get traded away because some other team wants to grab them first. We could get another 7th round pick. Probably not on the defensive line at this point, considering the Uchenna Nwosu knee situation, so that we might have an extra player on that Sam linebacker. But in the middle in particular, we have Radigan, and we have O'Connell, and then we have, Tyrell Dodson, and we have Drake Thomas, and now we bring in Barrett, right, who was with the Panthers, and he had a hell of a game too. We'll talk about that. So we can't keep all those linebackers, and I would bet that a Patrick O'Connell is going to get picked up by some team that just needs a linebacker. I don't know what it is with John Snyder's fascination with Radigan, other than he must be a hell of a communicator and a leader in the locker room. But John Radigan did get the start over Patrick O'Connell, which surprised me a little bit. Of course, Radigan has a lot more experience, but it's a brand new system for both of them, and Radigan has historically had injury issues. We haven't seen that from Patrick O'Connell. But Drake Thomas got a bunch of snaps. I don't think he's going to make the team. If they prefer O'Connell over him, I think it's going to switch between the two of them, Drake Thomas and Patrick O'Connell. When you look at... yes, Kendrick, this is live. How are you doing, Kendrick? If you ever want to watch this, you can join us on the chat. I schedule at regular times. Random times, but pretty regularly, so always look forward to a stream from me. You threw me off, girl. When you look at Barrett, he was confused, right? He only got traded for just a couple days ago, and it was exciting to me to see him get in there and learn as he battled for a position on the team. You could see him speaking and communicating with Patrick O'Connell quite regularly, saying, hey, is this where I'm supposed to be? Am I supposed to be over here? And at first he looked a little shaky, but as the game went on, he did perform a lot better. His biggest shining moment of the game was creating a block on that punt return with Dee Eskridge, where Dee took it to the house. Barrett was one of the leading blockers there, and he sealed that outside edge, allowing Dee to bounce outright. Really cool things to see from a player who I think was brought in to play special teams, and also who has a lot of experience communicating with Mike McDonald, so if he ever did need to go in and play, he could be healthy and be able to communicate in a healthy way to the other players instead of being confused. Part of his ability to communicate with Patrick O'Connell during this preseason game was based off of the fact that Patrick O'Connell learned Mike McDonald's communication style. He knows the scheme and how to speak. So by bringing in a Barrett, he's able to then communicate with someone who speaks the same language. So it was cool to see that actually take place on the field. As far as special teams, I don't know who all is going to make this team, guys. Everyone wants to, make the team on special teams, right? That's the way that you get in and you can make your chance to shine. But there's so many damn good players in this year in particular, where in previous years it's like, man, he's just here for special teams, right? Almost all of our special teams guys right now look like they could get second team snaps, right? Rotational snaps in a regular season game. So we've already talked about how Laviska Shenault is going to make the roster, especially after today. He didn't play a lot, and then when he was thrown at, he played incredibly well. People have been trying to debate, hey, who does this guy remind you of? When I look at Laviska Shenault, he looks like Cordell Patterson. And everyone else is also saying Cordell Patterson. He's just this big, athletic guy with wheels, right? Big old wheels so that he can move down the field just faster than everyone else. but it gets better. We talked about how we have D. Williams, who was a wide receiver. Now he's a corner. Now he's a returner. He's a football player, right? He's one of those guys that just plays football, but he was originally listed as wide receiver before moving to corner. He is probably going to make the roster because he plays all three phases of the game. And you don't necessarily want him to start all three phases of the game, but he's manageable. He can play receiver if for some reason our receiving room just completely implodes. He can play corner if we have a bunch of injuries in a row, or a DJ James, for instance, ends up not being able to perform. And if a Laviska Shenault gets injured, he can do returns. He can also be the second return man out there. So good things from him as just an overall player. One of the guys he's battling with, though, is a guy that I was wrong about. And we'll put his personal life aside. Dee Eskridge has routinely been one of those guys where you're like, oh, he could be the next Percy Harvin. He's got the teeny little wheels. He can charge down the field in a high acceleration rate. But whenever he would get the ball thrown to him, it would be bad situations or he would get injured. And so I described him even just 2 weeks ago. Dee Eskridge, the glass cannon. Well, he was a cannon today. He had the punt return, which is one of the reasons why he was drafted so high, often compared to Tavon Austin from the Rams. One of the main reasons Dee Eskridge didn't go to the first round was it was a weird draft that year. And so he ended up falling deeper, but he was expected to be a first-round draft pick in that 2020 season. We drafted him, of course, in the second round. The dude can book it. And if all he needed was a scheme that actually uses gadget players, then we may have a hell of a player on our roster. And so if he ends up being below Laviska Shenault, because I think it's Metcalf, JSN, Tyler Lockett, who's injured, and then we have Jake Bobo, Laviska Shenault. If we're only keeping 6 receivers, it's probably Dee Eskridge, just because of what he can do, but he hasn't proven himself to stay healthy his career. This is where it's like we could see a player that gets traded, because we have Dee Eskridge, who maybe just increased his stock so you can trade him away for a 7th round pick. He has to get paid after this season. Probably won't get paid a lot. But then on the other side, and I'm not going to talk about Cody White because he just looks like a guy to me, but maybe he just needs more opportunities. Easop Winston Jr. That dude might not be the best route runner in the world. He might not be an athletic freak. I've talked about how you either got the gigantic athletic freaks or you got the little athletic freaks, and then you have a bunch of normal ass people like you and me in the middle. I put him in that category. He's just a normal dude, but he's smart with his hands. He catches everything thrown his way. He doesn't flail around for the ball. He snatches it, and then he goes down more often than not. But I could see Dee Eskridge losing his job to Aesop purely because Aesop's got those hands. He catches everything under duress. And he had some balls thrown to him today that, man, you're not supposed to be throwing that ball. He's going to get crushed. That ball's going to get picked off before it even reaches him. But he hung on, oftentimes going horizontal for the ball. So shout out to Easop Winston Jr. I have no idea between the two of them who is going to make the team. It seems really likely that because Aesop has had 2 out of 3 really good games, and then Eskridge, just when he gets the ball, he looks like the most explosive guy on the field. So it's do you keep the reliability or do you keep the high ceiling? I don't know. Let me know in the comments below. Of course, this doesn't leave a lot of room for the rest of the wide receiving core. Cody White does look manageable. Part of that could be scheme. Part of it could be he just needs more snaps before teams start to adapt to his play style. I'm not quite sure, but I would put Aesop Winston Jr. above him. So White hopefully makes it to the practice squad in case we have an injury. When you look at the tight end room, Noah Fant played a snap or two, I think. Then he went to the bench. Night for him. We still don't have Farrell Brown. I don't know what's happening with him. Maybe he'll go to the PUP list. But we have Brady Russell, who is probably our number 2 tight end over Farrell Brown right now. He is all over the field. They put him at flanker for receiving, and he did manage to use his big athleticism to tear down the field. But one of the best plays was him starting at flanker after establishing a pattern and then motioning over to Y, and then at the snap, cracking over to the left side of the line to open up a big gap for Kenny McIntosh, who tore down the field for, oh my God, how long was that touchdown by Kenny? Let's take a look, see. He had a 56-yard run, and it was all opened up by that left side where then Brady Russell just cracks in and just opens a big hole on the C gap. And that's what I like to see from a tight end. If this dude can't block, then he's not worth a damn. He had some struggles in week 1. They got better last week too, him and A.J. Barner, who's our 4th-string tight end. But Brady Russell in particular really showed that he understands the scheme. He can get into motion to set up blocks so that his players around him can succeed. I love seeing that guy do that. And as I've talked about all preseason, Ken Walker is probably going to have a Pro Bowl or an All-Pro season this year. I have him easily at 900 yards receiving and the 900 yards rushing. A lot of these are going to come from screens, and you need a tight end who can go out there and just hammer into the dude and make sure that he is no longer a part of the play. Brady Russell has proven that he can be that guy so far. Often I compare him to Luke Wilson, right? A.J. Barner, he got a pass thrown his way. He did some blocking. He's a 4th-string tight end. He's competing with Farrell Brown for the roster. I expect him to make the roster. What was interesting, though, about the blocking scheme is that we saw that Frog Curtis over there at left tackle creating some blocks. He was also getting blown up a lot. At the start of the game, we had George Fant at right tackle, and he looked okay, but he looked like the 5th starting offensive lineman. Like, clearly the other 4 are much better than him at this point in his career. So if you are happy with how he's playing there, though, and you want to know if you're keeping a Stone Forsythe at left tackle or if you're keeping Jarrell at right tackle, and I didn't see a lot of Jarrell, so I think he secured his spot on the roster. Stone Forsythe and that Frog Curtis are the only ones left. So you have a guy who can play left tackle, and he's had lots of snaps at left tackle in Stone Forsythe. They move him to right tackle, and I think it's purely so that they could get as many snaps with Curtis at left tackle as possible to see if he could do it. Because, again, Stone Forsythe has been in the league for 4 years. If you move Curtis to your practice squad, will you be able to bring him up, keep Fant at right tackle or Stone Forsythe at right tackle, right? It's about longevity of your roster, making sure guys get a lot of looks at different positions. I did not like him there. I expect that if we let Curtis go, he's not going to get picked up and he's going to go to the practice squad. So Stone Forsythe, I believe, won that job at tackle. And the offensive line is going to be Charles Cross, Tomlinson, Williams, Bradford. We're going to have Abe Lucas start off on the PUP. So it's going to be George Fant. And then you have Oluwatimi again at center. You have Chris Haynes. And then you have Stone Forsythe, that making up our offensive line unit that suits up on game day. When we go to the quarterback room before we move back to defense, Geno Smith looks good. I mean, he always just, after proving himself, right, it was obvious he just needed a better scheme. Those out routes against the Cowboys in particular last year, I kept saying, don't throw the out. It's a bad scheme. It's not the quarterback. It's that the ball's always going to get there late. Don't scheme him that way. We have a bunch of plays right now that are vertical. They're stretching out defenders, and it's creating good lanes where he can choose if he wants to give space for the player or if he just wants to put it on the right shoulder, as we saw with DK Metcalf at the end of his drive, and then he was done for the night. When we look at Sam Howell, big concern was his survivability. Is he going to have any ghosts after spending time getting sacked over 60 times at the Commanders? He looked a little skittish week 1, but then every week since then, he's just been progressively getting more comfortable. One thing I like about him is that he was really scrappy today. When Curtis was getting beat on the outside, you could see that Sam Howell was aware of the situation, not panicking, and then moving his feet to put himself into position to keep the play on time. That is something that P.J. Walker did not do. But what helps Sam Howell be able to do that, of course, is the fact that he actually throws the ball accurately. I would bet PJ had a 40% completion rate tonight, and it showed. We had a 2-score lead, and we were kind of kicking the Browns' asses with our first string and second string quarterback. But once PJ got out there, everything went to a grounding halt. For reference, PJ Walker had seven completions on 10 attempts for 49 yards. One of those should have been a pick. Sam Howell was 6 and 9 for 45 yards. So they were about the same. But when Walker was inaccurate, he was incredibly inaccurate. The ball was not even going to be close to the target. But they basically had the same rate of completions, but that's not, the numbers don't always tell the whole story. Geno Smith, of course, was 4 for 5, 62 yards, and a touchdown. If you're curious, when you look at the Browns passing against our defense, they had Huntley, which was 17 for 22. I'm going somewhere with this. And 146 yards and 3 touchdowns. Huntley scored 3 touchdowns against our defense in the the third and fourth quarter, mostly the fourth. And then they had Thompson Robinson. He was 11 for 20 and 115 yards and a touchdown. Jameis Winston, 6 for 9, 63 yards, no touchdown. My point being about all of this is they had a lot of goddamn snaps on offense. Let me show you something. This is my Twitter. Hi, this is my Twitter. The final quarterback stats of the night. We had 24 attempts to their 51 passing attempts. Right? They had basically more than double. If you round it, they had double the amount of attempts that we had. Rushing, we had 15 rushes. They had 18 rushes. Right? We were about the same on that rate, but they just kept chucking the ball. And part of that, as we go to Seahawks.com, is that the time of possession was completely lopsided. We had 24-29. They had 35-31. They were on the field all night long, but they weren't gashing us. They were fighting for every single first down, and it showed. A lot of those third down conversions that they had were just trailing plays where Boykin, for instance, is right there, and he's just not going to make the team. So they're beating up on our fourth-string guys. But 3 touchdowns? I don't like that. I don't like that we shored everything up for the first 2 quarters or so and then just completely fell apart with our depth step. And it's not like these guys haven't been playing well. Nehemiah Pritchett gave up a bunch of passes. DJ James obviously secured himself a spot in the cornerback room. He is a tackling machine, and he's always in a position to stuff any outside plays. Cool to see that from him. Nehemiah Pritchett is going to make the team, but he kept getting beat deep, right? But that dude can also tackle the fuck out of people. But when you got to like Willie Roberts, the dude's getting beat in deep crossers, and he's tackling okay. So Willie Roberts probably not making the roster. Artie Burns, of course, is hurt, so his trade value just went into the toilet. I would expect Artie to be ready to play by week 1, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he should. And then Carlton Johnson, also a guy who's getting beat in trailing plays, but he can tackle. The only third guy out of Willie Roberts, Carlton Johnson, and then D. Williams, right, would be the third one. Like I said, he can play all 3 phases of the game. He kind of looks on the same skill set as a Carlton Johnson and Willie Roberts. There's probably more details in there, but he's also getting beaten on trailing plays, but he's able to make tackles. So I would fully expect, I mean, he plays special teams, right? You got to be able to tackle. So I would fully expect D. Williams out of the 3 of them to make the roster, giving us Woolen, Witherspoon, Trey Brown, Nehemiah Pritchett, DJ James, and then D. Williams being our 6th cornerback. The other guys, I think we can sneak to the practice squad. In fact, I hope so, because I think there's a lot of development there that can be done, and they look promising. They just need to get right over the edge, right? They just need to get right there. Safeties, notice I didn't list Boykin. I don't think Boykin's making the roster. He's probably going to our practice squad. When you go to the safety position, we did not see a lot of Blair Walsh. I believe he did give up a touchdown at the end, but last week he was all over the field to the effect that he was sometimes not hitting the right pursuit angles. You didn't see him crashing a lot. I saw him over the top. So it is definitely likely that we're going to have Blair Walsh not make the team because in coverage he has not shown that he can stop the big plays compared to, say, a Kayvon Wallace. One of the guys he's competing with is Kayvon Wallace. Cody Bryant obviously is there to stay. He got a bunch of starting snaps after Julian Love went out, and Cody Bryant looks like a guy who has his head on his shoulders and knows where to go with pursuit angles. He can also tackle. He also has his head looking for the ball, which is not something we've really seen from Marquise Blair. I would not be surprised if Marquise Blair didn't make the team, because I think Kayvon Wallace will. On the defensive line, I was wrong. I was so damn wrong about Jamie Sherrif. In fact, I was so wrong about Jamie Sherrif, I just kept saying, yeah, he's not making the team. Yeah, that dude's not making the team. But Cliff Averill today said that's his guy, and that's been his guy. The last time I heard either Cliff or Michael Bennett say that they had a guy, it was Boye Mafe. And Boye, long story short, he looks good, right? He looks great, very active in the hands. When you look at Jamie Sherrif, again, incredibly active with his hands. This is the thing that made Cliff Averill and Michael Bennett so good, was the way that they fought in between the shoulders to get out. He does that. This is not to say that he's ever going to be a starter, but with the new Osu injured and Mike Morris, right, looking the way that he does, where he's solid, but you can definitely rotate with him or move Mike Morris inside. I definitely think that a Sherrif is going to make this team because of his versatility, but also because of his potential. I would be surprised if he didn't, but you never know. You could, like McGill years ago, where he was just playing off script, so maybe Mike McDonald's mad at him for playing off script today. It could happen, all right? The defensive tackle room looks exquisite. It looks exquisite. There was the Jerron Reed sack where he lines up on the left at 3-tech, and then Williams lines up on the right at like nose tackle. And you can see they engage with the blockers, and then on step 3 to 5, Williams shoves his guy, I believe the center, into the right guard, which then blocks 2 guys, which allows Jerron Reed to stunt out and then go get that sack. They look really good together. Byron Murphy did not get a lot of snaps, but he, of course, was blowing up the backfield as well. If you have 3 really good defensive tackles and a Mike Morris who can swing in there, oh my God, right? Let's just hope that Uchenna Nwosu isn't injured, because if you have Uchenna and then you have Jerron Reed, Williams, Murphy, and then on the other side, Boye Mafe, you're going to crush almost all offensive lines. We should get some goddamn sacks this year, and there is nothing stopping us aside from, hey, why did you take out Nwosu's knee? But even then, our backup at Sam is good. We're going to slaughter people with our pass rush. The thing that will be stopping us most likely is the linebacking core in the back. Jerome Baker probably going to start on the season on the PUP list, considering he's still injured and we haven't seen anything from him. But Tyrese Knight is hauling ass into gaps. Our safeties are all over. Devin Witherspoon's probably going to get a lot of sacks. There's no reason for you to not be excited about this season unless we start just having injuries left and right, which is very unlikely to happen. The NFC West, heck, the NFC needs to be put on notice, because I'm predicting we go to the NFC Championship game at least. If we play this game, I know it's a preseason game, but if we play that way the entire year, as far as our first and second stringers, let's ignore the PJ Walker part, we're going to win 13 games, 14 games against most of the teams we're going up against. We're about to go against the Broncos, and they're starting Bo Nix thinking he's going to be their savior, and I expect him to get his ass handed to him. Yeah, this is awesome. This is going to be a hell of a season. I didn't even get it to Kenny McIntosh. He had the 1 carry that was really good, but he looked so damn athletic, he only got 1 carry, where he's been getting a ton of carries the last 2 weeks. He secured that job in 1 run. And then you looked at George Holani, and he is just trucking fools. He's like getting hit and then keeping his legs churning for another 3 or 4 yards. He could sneak onto the roster, and we have 4 running backs. No way we're having 5. Heck, he had 7 rushes for 38 yards, long of 18, and a touchdown. Yeah. Who do you want to make this Seahawks 53-man roster? Do you have any guys that you think are going to sneak in that I did not list today? I would love to know. Thank you for watching First Kick Seahawks. As we get ready for this week 1 game against the Broncos, I'm gonna reach out to someone. I'm going to see if I can get a Broncos guest before then. I've been reaching out to a few people, and I might know one. So fingers crossed we might have a cool guest on before that game. Please like the video. Subscribe to First Kick Seahawks. I'm Camden MacLaren, and go Hawks.